Welcome to another episode of Should You Summon? How the heck are you, everybody? I am Fastidious. In this video, we are talking very specifically about this 2x by 15x Eclipse Divine summoning for the three legendary heroes, Lucius Razaak, and the brand new Summoner Cultist Mage. Believe it or not, yes, we are getting another Cultist Mage, just like we only get Nightmare Fighters, and it's another Summoner Cultist Mage, but it's a very good hero, Zarus. All in all, this is a strong banner. None of these heroes are bad. Two of them are very strong, and Lucius in particular, I'm probably going to talk about him the most in this video, even though hopefully this video is not that long. Once again, I can keep it a little short. We shall see. He has risen so much since this update. It is remarkable. The introduction of Kagiri actually is an enormous buff to Lucius. I'm going to go deep on that. And obviously, they patched Semros, so during the Aegis phase, the big shield phase, you can permanently remove stacks. So it's not like you bring the stacks down from 4 to 0, then he puts 5 back on as he had been doing the past few months. No, you go from 4 to 0, the next time he applies a buff, it is 1. That is humongous. All in all, I think all three of these legendary heroes have their uses, and especially proper endgame uses. They are all in different degrees of quality, I would say, but they seem to get a bad rap. And I actually don't think that perception is so valid. They really can shine in a lot of areas, particularly Zarus and Lucius on this banner are really important heroes you're eventually certainly going to want to have on your roster. In general, it does make some sense why a lot of people are poo-pooing this banner because it's running alongside the Kagiri banner, which for a lot of players is going to be more desirable. But there is a very not insignificant contingent of players that I really think ought to be summoning on this banner specifically, or be summoning on both these banners. This banner is also kind of falling in the shadow of the Hex and Twyla banner that is almost certainly arriving 2 weeks from today. But in a lot of ways, this banner is stronger for a lot of accounts. We have a ton to discuss. Very quickly, you notice I did not mention the epics. These epics are not worth mentioning, so that's the last time you will hear me use the word epic. Let's focus on these legendaries. They can all shine in their own places. Zarus is very intriguing. Lucius is a total powerhouse who just got buffed in 2 major ways. And Razak is pretty darn solid, especially in the key things he's useful in. So I'm going to keep the overview on each hero fairly brief. I've done content on all these guys in the past, and I certainly will have more to come, especially for Zarus and Lucius. So we'll keep those hero overviews fairly short so I can really focus on answering the question, should you summon for each and every player, spender type, progression level, everything. Let's get into it.
Fastidious.
Fastidious.
Okay, let's kick things off with the new hero to the game, Zarus. I'm going to call him Zarus. We can decide in the comments if you want a consensus pronunciation. I really think Zarus is the best way to read it. However, it does seem, based on design and everything, he is based off of the Greek character from mythology, Charon, is how you'd say it in English. So it would be Xaris. The X is a chi in Greek. We're getting into the weeds, but really cool. I love the design. He's supposed to be like the ferryman from the River Styx when you enter the underworld in Greek mythology. Awesome. One of the cooler looking heroes in the game. Imagine having like him, Bubba, Artemis, like a really cool group of cultists you can throw together. Really, really like it. The kit is very well designed. In certain aspects, it is like an S+ kit. In other ways, it's kind of held back by some key mechanisms, which I think leads to a really good balance, where he's a superstar in certain content if you use him right. Otherwise, he's just a normal, good, legendary hero. Let me walk you through it. He is a summoner, and he summons these things over here called Souls of the Damned. They basically are little things he summons. I'll bring up his ultimate right now. You can see they pop out to the sides of him, and they have his attributes, they deal damage, so on and so on. You can see that summon animation right now above my head. There they are. They're these red things floating all around. They deal damage. What more do you really want to know? The key things with these Souls of the Damned that he summons is it's always going to be less and less and less. On a first deploy, he's deploying 3 of them. So the first time you deploy him, he's starting from the get with 3 Souls of the Damned already summoned. If we go to the ultimate now, every time you use it, the number of Souls of the Damned he summons is decreased. He starts off summoning 4, then the next ultimate is 3, then 2, and then you bottom out at 1. You can't summon less than 1. The way a lot of people are going to want to use him is to keep cycling him on and off the field. So think of another good cultist DPS like Cerberus. You can use him in a similar way, except he does not have the crazy increasing cost restriction that kind of makes him prohibitive for long fights like Cerberus does. You can use him to really strong effect in Gear Raid 1 or Gear Raid 4, aka Gear Dungeon 1, by just cycling him on and off, because every time you won't get to keep using this talent over and over, only on the first deploy. So if you want to wipe out something in a big way in Gear Raid 1 or Gear Raid 4, you can really take advantage of that on the first deploy. But even after that, you have a pretty quick uptime on the ult here. With max skill ups, his ult cost is 600 with an initial cost of 500. So you can kind of like insta ult and even take him right off right away. You get that ult going. These Souls of the Damned, after a 2.2 second animation, come out and exist for 30 seconds. So for those 30 seconds, every time when you're cycling him on and off, it's Zarus and 4 summons, and the damage is immense. Ronaldo has a great video on this. I've done some testing. Of course, in the coming days, I'm gonna have a big guide on him. If you use him well, it's pretty OP AoE magic damage. So people progressing through the game still that have not beaten stage 10 in Gear Raid 4, and certainly players that have still not cleared Gear Raid 1 up through stage 21, this is like a staple unit. He is supremely, supremely powerful. Another key thing with how long the Souls of the Damned will be out on the field for, it won't actually end up being a full 30 seconds, because if we look at his basic attack, when there are no summons on the field, no Souls of the Damned, all his hits are going to restore rage, so he can rage cycle very effectively. This is passive generation, 10 points of rage cost every second. He's not doing anything else. He's just going to rage, rage, rage up, and then the Souls of the Damned will get summoned and they'll do all the work. When they are out there though, he's essentially like whipping them into shape. So he does this thing, coercion, where he actually attacks the Souls of the Damned, and basically it's like, imagine like whipping a horse or something, right? He's revving them up. So they're going to do more damage every time for 5 seconds, but it does reduce their existence time by 5 seconds. So typically, it's not going to happen that often, because as you can see, basic attacks for Zarus cannot have their attack interval reduced by attack speed bonuses, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. In this case, I think it's all just a good thing. You don't want him hitting them too often and reducing the time. And moreover, it makes it really easy to build him, because you can fully ignore attack speed. That's one less stat to worry about. You can just go all out DPS on this guy, and obviously the Souls of the Damned gets all his attributes. So it's a very nice thing. It's a ton of damage. When you have 4 of those guys out there, it is really good. And then the first deploy, when you get these 3 and then the additional 4, you've got 7 summons. It's nutty. It's really, really good. If we go here, you can get a little bit of slow from him. The first 2 attacks, once he summons his Souls of the Damned, they do slow. It's a 3-second slow. It's not that significant, but obviously if you're running a Cultist Lord, it will lead to a damage boost. And then finally, if you're staggering your summons somehow, maybe you get some summons from the talent, then some from the ult, when any Souls of the Damned disappear, it's extending the duration, continuing the existence of whatever Souls of the Damned are still out there by 1 second. This can go up to 2 seconds. I think you get a general sense. We're going a little longer on Zarus than we will on the other heroes since he's brand spanking new, but you're getting a general sense of how unique this kit is and actually how powerful it can be, because he can have 7 summoned units out on the field on that first deploy, absolutely wreaking havoc. Mike has a good video, Ronaldo has a good video, I have a very good video coming out. Look forward to it. His Awakenings, the A1, especially for things like Arena, or where you need a huge burst in Gear Raid 1 perhaps, it is super good. That first initial deploy from the talent, now instead of 3 extra Souls of the Damned, it is increased to 5. You get 2 extras, so you can have 9 of those bad boys out there almost instantaneously. You deploy him, you get 5, and then 100 skill costs later, you'd use his ultimate, and you get another 4. It's nuts. We can increase that attack, which is important, because as we are learning with these summoner mages, they have very low base attack, only a touch over 4k, so a little additional base attack is really, really nice. The A3 now is really powerful, especially when you want big, crazy bursts of damage when you're not going to cycle him. Every time he restores rage, which is every second, if there are no Souls of the Damned on the field, there's a 1 in 20 chance he'll just instantly pop that thing full. It can lead to really frustrating RNG bursty things in Arena. It actually might even make him pretty viable in GVG. I think a lot of people will play around with a lot of summoner kind of cultist things now. The A4, he's got some penetration, so he's ignoring 8% of, in this case, magic resistance since he's a magic DPS. And finally, the A5 increases the effect duration of coercion on the Souls of the Damned by 5 seconds. So this is the increased damage that comes from him whipping them into shape, as I described earlier. Now you're gonna get that 40% boost every time he does that for a full 10 seconds. It's really good. Zarus, just to break it down, is gonna be fantastic where you need AoE magic DPS. Gear Aid 4, Gear Aid 1. There will be some skill coming into it with cycling him on and off. And then for some bursty, crazy AoE strats in PvP, specifically AoE Arena, he is going to be a rock star. To be seen if he will be top meta. I do think there's a chance he can fit his way into those Apex metas. However, definitively, he will be meta for normal players, just climbing their way up to Overlord. Very cool hero, and also he's new, so if you're focused on your nascent banner and your collection and your Pokédex, he is someone you are going to want to go grab. I know me personally, I'm going to be summoning for him. Okay, picking up the pace in a big way, let's do someone easy. Razak. Razak has very big, very bursty piercing damage, and he's a marksman. Similar to Nyx, the difference with Nyx is she has this long, kind of continuous, very strong AoE ult with skill ups, and if you get her Awaken level 1, just Awaken level 1, Nyx's ultimate lasts 35 seconds. Razak, on the other hand, doesn't do some continuous revved up AoE from his ult. He does one big gigantic burst, is really strong. If you get some awakenings into him, especially at A5, you have a chance to double hit with it, a 1 in 4 chance. He's a cool hero, he's underrated. Now that we have Furious Torrent in the game, he does have some proper endgame viability. And then also, he does have a very unique passive and a very unique bond skill with Reeve. So if we look at this passive over here, he has an XP mastery. When he is brought on the team you use, he doesn't even need to be deployed, but when he's a member of the team you use to clear any content, whatever XP you get, he increases it by 5%. If you get Reeve from this bond skill title heritage, he will actually increase that XP by 10%, by an additional 5%. Also for Reeve, when on the team, will increase gold by 6%, and if you have Razak, brings it up to 12%. So for a lot of stuff, if you want to min-max once you've got your power of dominance and cleared a lot of content, likely you should redo all your auto battles, all your farming to include Razak and Reeve somewhere in the comp, because you're just getting increased bonus and overflow rewards. He's got big burst, he's really good. He's obviously the least sexy character, not just because he's hideous, but least sexy, least appealing character on this banner. But I do think he gets a bad rap. I mean, he's not a useless hero. It's big burst. He's very strong in Furious Torrent. I will say he's common bucket, so this is not a banner you're pulling for Razak, but he's not such a nightmare consolation prize unless you're Hirchin Bambi, who has pulled him like 16 times. Let's move on. Lucius. Lucius, in my opinion, is the superstar of this banner. He just had such a glow up, and I already had him rated extremely, extremely high. I'm not going to go through the whole kit. It is very confusing because he has this thing where he does pursuits, which happen at a 25% chance, which go up to a 45% chance during the ultimate, and so on and so on. It's very confusing. When you stack enough pursuits, you get stacks of damnation. When you stack up enough damnation, you get a demonic embrace. It locks him out of his ult. It's very frustrating, except if you want to deal damage. So let's take some steps back. If you want to use Lucius as a dispeller, when I say dispeller, I mean someone that strips buffs, dispels buffs from enemies. The build is pretty tight. It's pretty tricky. You can't build him too fast because you cannot have him putting out too many hits because you'll build damnation stacks too fast and you'll get locked out of your ult. That is how you dispel the buffs from the enemies. However, you have a lot more breathing room now because those Aegis stacks do not come back in full. So once you get a strip, it's permanently stripped. So for starters, you don't have to sweat it if you get locked out one time and you fall behind. Moreover, if you do time it out well, you get him the right attack speed, you use the ultimate when appropriate. You can go check out my old streams or wait for my upcoming guide on him. It's going to be a very good one. I'm really excited about it. We're going to have Lucius in 2 different builds. But if you're doing that thing, you can just keep the buffs off the boss almost the entire fight, full stop. They'll never get higher than 2. You can be in complete and utter control. It is crazy. The other key thing with the introduction of Kagiri, maybe you don't even want to use Lucius as a dispeller anymore. You don't want to use him as a stripper. Let Kagiri do that. He does not have this lockout mechanic, and instead that annoying lockout mechanic, the demonic embrace over here, and paired with this passive, you can take full advantage of it because it absolutely freaking shreds. And so to do so, you build him very fast, you get his attack up to the moon, you get a ton of crit and crit damage on him. You don't worry about the lockout, you're actually seeking the lockout, because when he's in that state, even though he can't ult and dispel buffs, what he can do is absolutely destroy his enemies. He is so good for Semra, he's so good for Guild Boss 2 if you can build him in that way. The DPS potential is extremely high, especially if you run him with Ingrid or Leia, even if you just run him with Ein. So you can actually pair Lucius and Kagiri together because they're both Watchers, and with a Watcher Lord, heck, even Ein, the damage is pretty freaking wild. Lucius is a top DPS now if you choose to not take advantage of the Dispel function over here and let Kagiri take care of that. I really like Lucius. On top of that, he has very strong awakenings. Those pursuits that he hits 25% of the time, up to 45% of the time, have increased DPS. He gets more attack. This A3 really opens up a lot of Guild Boss 2 comps, especially if you run him quickly, because you can use him as a second stunner, and maybe you do not have to lean on a Nazim or a Helga. You could just do like Lucius and Tordor, or Lucius and Praetus, or Lucius and even Twin Fiend and Hex. It totally works. At A4, he gets a big damage boost, and then finally at A5, this one is ridiculous. During that demonic embrace where he's getting all the penetration, where he's getting the increased damage, when he's going absolutely nuts, every single hit will increase his attack post-deployment by 2%, up to 36%. So after he's got 18 hits, which he can get in that time if you build him quick, which you will for a DPS build, he has his post-deployment attack boosted by over a third. It is nutty. The introduction of Kagiri really opens up Lucius. I'm going to demonstrate this on my account. Once I get Kagiri tomorrow, I'll start throwing the comp together. Lucius is a top DPS now. So all in all, what do I think about this banner? Zarus and Lucius are super appealing and really desirable. You should want to have them on your team, and if you got them, getting Awakenings is a really nice thing, especially for Lucius. And then Razak is not as terrible a consolation prize as everyone says. Why are people then acting like this is the worst banner ever, the worst 2x by 15x? I don't know, it's kind of blowing my mind. I mean, obviously, I do know it's because Hex and Twyla are coming in 2 weeks, and objectively, that's a more appealing banner. However, we're forgetting that nothing's guaranteed on either of these two banners, and this banner actually comes with a 2x chance to get legendaries. It is really likely you could pull 450 summons for Hex and Twyla, and if you're off a Fresh Pity, hit 2 legendaries, and there's gonna be like a 60% chance that you don't get Hex or Twyla, or it's gonna be a 50-50. It's a toss-up. With this, at least, it's very controlled. If you did 400 summons, for example, you're very likely to get Zarus and Lucius. Maybe you get both, but again, you don't know. That's why this banner is also very much living in the shadow of the Kagiri banner. So let's move into advice time. If you are an early or mid-game player, if you're still filling out your roster, you don't have a ton of good legendary heroes for every class of hero in this game, and you do not have 250 summons to guarantee Kagiri, then 100%, even with Hex and Twyla coming, I think you should summon on this banner. Zarus is going to be a huge hard carry for Gear Aid 1 and Gear Aid 4. He's going to help you in Arena. And then Lucius is going to be monumentally powerful in Guild Boss 2, and he's also extremely strong in Gear Aid 3. Razak also, as a consolation prize, will help you in Gear Aid 3. He'll help you in Furious Torrent. If you're really progressing and you're really early on and you haven't beaten all of campaign, he is fantastic there. This is a great banner to fill out your roster and really take advantage of that 2x rate up. If you do have the 250 summons or more, and you are a beginner or early game or mid game, without a doubt, take the good hero that is guaranteed and go for Kagiri. After that point, if you have far more than 250, you can decide if you want to do pity manipulation. I will share a video I've already made in announcements after I post this video. You can go check it out, how to do pity manipulation for dummies. But essentially, you can make that call. I would, if I was at that beginner point. I would not be taking my chances on Hex and Twyla if I was at that level of progression, not yet in the late and end game, because nothing with Hex and Twyla is guaranteed. If you are a big spender, you're going to be able to do all of those things, but you don't need me to tell you that. Moving on to late and end game, the consideration really comes down to how much you spend and how much you already have saved in terms of summons and diamonds. If you've got a big fat stack or you're willing to drop a big fat wad, then absolutely you should go for Kagiri, pity manipulate, and then whatever you have left over, hopefully once you hit Zarus without going crazy, this is what I'm doing, you can dump the rest on Hex and Twyla. If you don't have 250, like you're in that late and end game, but you're a free to play or you're a low spender, I would just hold. unless you already have the makings of a great Watcher comp, but you really need Lucius, and then maybe you already have your Nightmare units, your Nightmare fighters settled so you don't need Twyla, and maybe you've already got Hex, then you can go for it. But especially if you don't have Hex and if you don't have that 250 summons, you just skip this one. It's that simple. For fully endgame players, I think it is very hard to skip Zarus. He is a new hero. Of course, if you're at that endgame and you don't have a Hex, it's pretty simple. But if you don't have Zarus, you don't have a Lucius, this is going to be so more likely that you hit them here than you hit a Hex or Twyla. It's as simple as that. And then finally, for you big spenders, you whales and you krakens, you got to unload on all of this. There's no way you should be coming out of this without Kagiri and without Zarus. I probably would keep it to the bare minimum because you'll be able to chip away at Zarus and Lucius over time with your normal summons, save the rest for Twyla. But that's what I'm doing because honestly, with the stack I've got right now, I will put my diamonds where my mouth is. You can see I have 53,500. I have almost 150 blue summons. And over here in the mail, I've got another 30K I'm sitting on. So I've got almost 85,000 diamonds and almost 150 blue summons. I'm going to make a pretty honest attempt to pity manipulate on my way to Kagiri and then go and get Zarus. And if I don't get him then, try another time or two. Nascent banners are really powerful if you can start filling out your roster, filling out your Pokédex. This is a big opportunity. I think it's really likely, we'll see once the results start coming in this weekend, but I think it's really likely Zarus will be a rare bucket hero. So if you don't get him now, you might be in the position that I'm in, right? I didn't go for Magda, and I've not come close to getting her since, and I'm kind of waiting around, and I really regret it. Because when it comes to those rare bucket heroes, you have to get sincerely lucky, especially off banner. You have to get very, very lucky. I hope that answers your questions. If you have any more, let me know in the comments of this video. This has been a crazy week for me. I'm still finishing my move. I have to go literally all the way across the country from Utah to Cape Cod for a wedding. All this content's in the games. So I'm filming and streaming more than I have in months. It's pretty intense. So if you do appreciate the content, please subscribe to the channel. We're marching towards 20,000 subscribers. Hit the notification bell. Give the video a big thumbs up. Share it with your mother. I've been Fastidious, and I'll see you real soon.
Fastidious.